Well, thank you for joining us today on In Vivo. Again, if you just tuned in, I'm Jan Waddy, features editor here at the Express News, and I'm joined by restaurant critic Mike Sutter.
Hi.
And so today we are going to go over the choices for the top 50 restaurants.
Yeah, I was sitting down and figuring out the top 25, which is how we all have done it the last couple of years. I started that in 2022 or 23, because the year before in 22, I just did top 10 because that was really what we were in this big top 10 groove. And we had never singled out that many restaurants for a best of, because there's that idea that when you start getting the number too big, you're not doing best of, you're just doing a listing of all the restaurants that are available. So I decided to go to 25. And then last year I was sitting down and saying, okay, let's do top 50. San Francisco does 100, Houston does 100. Why can't we start bumping our numbers up? But as I started to get toward 40, 42, 43, things like that, I was going, this is a restaurant that I like, that's reliable, that's locally owned. Is it the kind of restaurant that represents our growth as a culinary scene? And I thought, well, maybe not, but some things have changed. So this year, when I started thinking about whether we could do 50, I couldn't stop at 50. My number went all the way to 85. So it became a game of stopping at 50.
One thing I want to point out, viewers, you can submit any questions that you have for Mike about restaurants that were included and ones that were not. And so just the Q&A on the screen. So we look forward to hearing from you. I also wanted to talk about, so what specifically has changed?
Well, two big things have happened in the year since I did the last list. One of those things was the rise of Pullman Market. And I don't think sometimes that we appreciate just how much creativity, how much money, how much effort, how much thought went into this, I think initially thought was going to be another food hall, which I love a good food hall, but it's the good part that sometimes can be elusive. But Pullman, they ambitiously said, we're going to put 4 full-time restaurants in here. And then we're going to have this whole carnival midway, 7 days a week of smaller food operations. We're going to have burgers. We're going to have ceviche and tacos. We're going to have gourmet ice cream from Chef Tavel, Bristol Joseph. And we're going to have an entire marketplace and a bakery. And you're going, no, you're not. This is just going to be another food hall. Well, here we are a year later, and it's been recognized by Tavel, the pastry chef I just mentioned, was named by Esquire as the nation's #1 pastry chef. Okay. And then Pullman Market got named one of the top 10 new restaurants in the country by the Robb Report. And that dropped just day before yesterday. So that happened, and kind of the creativity that spurred, not just the restaurants themselves. You'll find Nicosia and you'll find Mesquite, which are 2 of the 4 sit-down restaurants on that top 50 list. But I think some of the, the creativity generated by that started to make the scene feel a little bit more like, well, we need to up our game. Because we can't have the operation from Austin coming out and showing us how to do our thing, right? And I say that, and Kevin Fink, the owner of that, hates it when I have to point out, well, they're from Austin. And initially, that sort of felt like that parachute operation, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to drop in from another city and sort of operate this as an adjunct. But I have to say, that team shows up every day. I've talked to people over there who commute from their homes in Austin because that's where the corporation was based, where the hospitality group is based, but they commute here 4 or 5 days a week to San Antonio. And as somebody who started out as an Austinite commuting to San Antonio 5 days a week for 2 years, I completely, I feel that, right? I have respect for that. The other thing that happened was Michelin came to town. And I know that each of the cities in Texas that were considered, the chambers of commerce, the business groups in that city got together and pooled their money to come up with about $250,000 each to be considered within the Michelin system. That aside, that still meant that the inspectors came to those cities and made decisions, and not everybody got on. The city of Fort Worth, for example, I felt got the short end of that stick. They paid their money and they got very little representation, but we got 12 restaurants on the list here in San Antonio, and we got them in all three levels. The entry level, which is recommended, we had, let's find that out. I had that written down. My apologies. But we had 12 restaurants in that Michelin grouping, including a 1-star for Michelin, the progressive Mexican restaurant there in Southtown. So that kind of, while it's not exactly like restaurant openings, I think, changes our perspective some, where we say, oh, these places that we hadn't thought about as being on a national level, well, there are people from the international level who believe that they completely are. And so I kind of felt like what was created, what bubbled up from those two developments kind of changed my perspective. And I think made people get a little bit more invested even than they were before.
And then Michelin is also one of the finalists for the James Beard Awards being announced Monday.
Yeah, they are up for the other Michelin award that Michelin won was Michelin. I get those two tangled up in my mouth, but they got recognized for hospitality, best service for their sommelier and their bar programs. So that was nice. But they're also up they're a finalist for a James Beard Award for best hospitality nationwide. So in a pretty narrowed down group that's being considered nationwide. And those awards will be announced Monday night, and we'll put those up. We're going to be covering that live, not from Chicago, but we'll get the feed and we'll get that information up. Also, there's another top 50 restaurant whose chef is up for Best Chef Texas at the James Beard Finals that'll be announced Monday as well. And that is Emil Oliva from Leche de Tigre. So that, I think the awards make us feel validated, but they don't define the scene. And it's nice that we're getting that kind of recognition, but we've still got to show up every day, both as restaurant owners and as restaurant customers. I hate to be the ringing the bell on that, but when I drive by and Texas Roadhouse is on a wait, and the locally owned restaurant next door or across the street isn't quite on a wait, or there are 3 or 4 cars in the parking lot, then we can't look around and say, well, why aren't these local restaurants making it? Well, we've got to show up. That's the way that they make it. And I can't tell you how many times in the last year I've been the only person in a restaurant at a table, at 5:30 in the afternoon, at 6:30 in the evening, and just wondering how we're going to be able to sustain a scene if we don't show up for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're definitely showing up at restaurants. How many restaurant visits did you do this year?
Well, I had to go through and count from my expense reports. And by the way, thank you for that. I don't know if everybody knows this, but when I go to a restaurant, when any of our food coverage teams go to restaurants, we pay our way. We pay at the restaurant. We don't accept or solicit free food or special treatment. And then the Hearst Corporation and the San Antonio Express News reimburses our expenses. We are committed to covering the restaurant scene with a degree of integrity that makes sure that we're not just out there playing favorites for whoever wants to wave a free lunch at us like that. So I looked over my expense report, and I've been to, I think the number was 413 restaurants between now and the last time we did the top 25 restaurants.
Mhm.
And everything that I looked at for the top 50, I have been to recently enough that there haven't been changes or in quality or consistency or service. And I feel very confident about that.
Well, I have a lot more questions, but I don't want to be the only one asking questions. Don't forget, you can find the link to Mike's top 50 restaurants in the resources tab and ask your questions using the Q&A button.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the methodology when you are choosing these restaurants. Like, how many new visits did you have to go to this year for restaurants?
I did, and I haven't turned in all these expenses yet, but I did 47 new visits for this. Anytime that we look at doing a top 10, a 25, and in this case, a 50, we want to make sure that we have the most recent data that we can possibly get. And these are the kinds of places that I have gone for all kinds of other roundups that we do for top 10 considerations for fried chicken and brunch and steakhouses and breakfast. And these are the kinds of restaurants that show up on lists like these because they have found a very nice specialty to work.
We have our first question.
Please.
Do you consider service when you rate a restaurant? It seems service or lack thereof is a major fail at local establishments. Is that true?
I wouldn't throw a blanket of service being a failure issue at local restaurants, but I certainly would say that, yes, of course, I consider service. I consider the totality of the experience. When we go out to eat, we're not just looking for food. If we're going into a restaurant, we have made a decision that we're going to be part of that experience, the totality of it. And the base word of the word restaurant comes from the French to restore. And that's what we're looking for to a degree, a place of restoration. Rest, let somebody else do the dishes, let somebody else do the cooking. And, maybe we have a drink. It's some quality time that we can spend with the people that we came with. And service helps to frame the experience that we get at any restaurant. It's never just about the food. And a good service experience can really make the food even better than you thought it was, because so much of what we experience is up here, right? And I would say, you think about, go to Blue Prime Steakhouse, for example, a locally owned place, and there is a battalion of people waiting to serve you. And then you go to some places that are a little bit, don't have quite the capital to have put into it. I'm thinking of Sticks and Stone, where it was Chef Leo Davila and his sister was front of house and was a lot of times the only waiter in the restaurant. Now, to me, that reinforces the face of the restaurant, the personality of the restaurant. When you really get to know the people who are serving you, and you kind of feel and empathize with what they're going through. It's expensive to keep people on staff. It's expensive, certainly, to staff at a level where we feel like we're getting the whole show. I mean, if you want the whole show, there are places like Signature at La Cantera that they've got enough people on the floor that they can do Russian-style simultaneous plate drops. So everybody gets their food at the same time, and it's like this big, glorious presentation. Voila! And but not everybody can afford to do that. But I think that service works both ways, and we can be better customers, and that helps people be better servers. If we show grace and we show gratitude and we show an open heart and willingness to be part of the experience, our service staffs pick up on that, and it makes our experience better.
So another question about mentioning a restaurant or two that just missed the cut. And I know we have talked about this, of how hard a decision it was to cut off, where there are some, 51, 52 that.
And I just love that question, because doing the top 10, that's easy. doing the top 25, okay, I can do that. It's those last 25, it's numbers 26 through 50 that start to become just, oh, but this precious pearl right here, I've got to have that in there. Oh, but wait, what about that one? And so for every restaurant that is in, say, the 26 through 50, I considered another 3 or 4 for its spot. And so it had to fight for that. In fact, the most vicious fighting, this is all going on in my head, happened between 40 and 50. And shall I name a couple of names for places that, let's just say they were all tied for 51. Now, please understand that this doesn't mean that I don't like these places. These are places I like, that I've written about, that have been included in top 10 roundups. Some of them have the best of that small category that they do. But when thinking about it, again, with service, with quality of food, with consistency, with creativity, these you've got to draw the line somewhere. And these are a few. Bistro 9, Boudreaux's on the Riverwalk, my number 1 Riverwalk restaurant last year. Chris Madrid's, the burger outpost. Quiche, the progressive Mexican restaurant. El Bucanero, my favorite Mexican seafood casual place that's just always full of life and mariachis and great fried fish and these big molcajete bowls. And Haniel Garden, our number 1 Korean restaurant, with a project that I did with Salgu Wismath. I love that restaurant, but it's one person who runs it, and you have got to call that morning to say, hey, I'd like to come by. Can you accommodate me today? So it's almost like an if you know kind of situation. But I love the food. La Frite Belgian Bistro in Southtown. I've had some of the best dates of my life at La Frite, sitting in that window, pretending like I was in Brussels or something like that. La Panaderia, love that place. Lover's Pizzeria, which is already in this barbecue level supply and demand crisis. They make 70 pizzas a day. They make enough dough for 70 pizzas. And when those are gone, buddy, it's over. Last time I was there, over came an hour and 15 minutes into them opening the doors. So those are all things that you look at. And then for that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to put that out there and say, okay, everybody show up, because you might show up and just wait in the hot sun for 45 minutes to find out that there's no pizza dough left.
Mm-hmm. Another question, how do you gauge cleanliness, hygiene in restaurants? Is that something you take into consideration?
Let's knock wood here. But in the thousands of restaurant visits that I've done as a restaurant critic, both here and in Austin, I have never gotten sick from a restaurant experience. I think the last time I got sick from eating at a restaurant was the day before I got married in 1991. I went to, it was, you know what? That's a tricky thing. You shouldn't, as a journalist, as a responsible journalist, I can't go out there and say, well, this place gave me food poisoning, because there's really not a lot of ways to prove that, and especially after the fact. So there are a number of things that could have been happening to you to give you what you thought was food poisoning from this one place. I mean, common sense tells us that if you eat a big plate full of oysters and you're, oysters consume your life for the next 3 days, that's exactly where that came from. But I find that most restaurants do a good job with hygiene, with cleanliness. Some things that you can look for when you go into a restaurant: look at the windowsills. If you see things have sort of gathered around the windowsills and they look like they haven't been tended to in a while, then you can imagine that there were maybe some other detail issues that haven't been tended to in a while. I've gone to a few places where I thought, man, there's just no way I would eat here. But for the most part, I think restaurants are doing a pretty good job with cleanliness, with health. Like I said, I haven't gotten sick from anywhere I've eaten in San Antonio. And also, you can walk in a taqueria. The first thing I did as the critic here went to 365 days of taquerias, and just that aroma of Fabuloso coming in right after they open or just before they're about to close. And just, that something clean is going on when you smell that lovely bouquet of that purple juice that they use to clean and to sort of give a sense of setting, right? So anytime I smell Fabuloso, anytime I hear Despacito, I am right back in 2016 going to, 10 taquerias in one day.
So another fan of Leche de Tigre. So this person wants to know how far away you think they are from getting a Michelin star like Michelin.
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. Well, they got a recommendation from Michelin. Let me look real quick to see what level of recognition they got. They got a recommended. Like I said, there's recommended, then there's Bib Gourmand, which is the next level up, and it's just shy of a star. And what they're doing there is saying you have great food at a great value. And we had a couple of those. We had Cullum's Attaboy, the Jerk Shack, Ladino, and Southerly all won Michelin Bib Gourmand. Leche de Tigre joined Tuum Smokehouse, Barbecue Station, Garcia's Mexican Food, Little M's Oyster Bar, Nicosi at Pullman Market, and Signature at La Cantera. So those are ones that were recommended. It's hard to guess what the Michelin inspectors are up to. Nobody knows when they come. Nobody knows who they are. Everybody has ideas. I am not a Michelin inspector. I don't know why I looked at my microphone to say that, but I am not a Michelin inspector. So how close they are, I'm going to tell you that I went just the other night and sort of showed up out of the blue because I happened to be in the neighborhood for a lovely spring night and sat waiting for a table for, half an hour because they were just that busy. When somebody is that busy, that tells me that something right is going on because they are way past just that scene making moment that the hot new restaurants get. They get that honeymoon period of a couple of months. Well, Leche de Tigre is far past that. And, but they're still generating that kind of excitement. So the Michelin inspectors renew their evaluation of scene cities every year. And we've got 2 more years of consideration for Michelin that was, again, paying for consideration, not paying for actual ratings, right? So they've got at least 2 more years to continue to improve and continue to get closer to that golden star.
Okay. So this is from an Asian food lover, Chinese, Thai, Vietnamese, compared to other cities. This person says there's a lack of good Asian restaurants in San Antonio. You list Sichuan and Kimura. Any hidden gems? They're always on the hunt for good pho or ramen. Oh, good heavens. I love that question. Of course, Kimura is my favorite place for ramen. A place that you might never guess, but if you're a fan, you've probably already been there, is Charity Bar. That the chef there, Ernest Bradley, chef and co-owner, has been making innovative Japanese food and ramen for at least the almost 15 years now that Kimura has been doing ramen, because Ernest Bradley started out making ramen and helping to run operations for Chef Michael Sohaki. And so Charity Bar is a great place for ramen and for other kind of Japanese specialty items. I love for Vietnamese food, SP Cafe over at Park North. Is that shopping center called Park North? There's an Alamo Draft House there, and then SP Cafe is just in one of the strip center
spaces there. I really feel like I'm getting the same experience of when I've traveled to Vietnam for pho and for banh mi and just the experience in their Cafe Suida, the Vietnamese coffee. They do it just right. It's just like I had when I was in Hanoi and Da Nang. And so I really like that. There's also a Vietnamese restaurant called Berni, Berni, that does a great job. There are other. Oh, okay. I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, but I will. There's a place for ramen that I really like called Suck It. It's down in St. Paul Square if you can find a place to park, but they do a really nice job with ramen as long as you don't have to say the name of the restaurant too many times, because you don't know what's going to appear after you say that 3 times.
So any predictions on what you think San Antonio's restaurant scene will look like in the years to come? Where do you think it's headed?
Oh, that's a good question. I used to say when I first started here, and this has been 9 years ago now, that San Antonio felt like where Austin was 10 years ago, because I was in Austin 10 years ago, right? And covering food and trying to make my way around there and figuring that out. I think as awareness of your expectations for restaurant experiences starts to go up, so does the level of people trying to meet that restaurant experience. So it's up to us as customers to continue to support locally owned and show up and don't give up after one bad experience. Give them a chance to make that right. I think that also as our infrastructure builds, think about all the highway construction that's been going on. Think about it even on a smaller scale on Broadway, how horribly torn up Broadway was for so long. But now that it's become a pedestrian friendly on both sides of the street, there's more 2-hour parking available, that restaurants have already started to say, hey, I think we can make a go of it there. Think about it, Broadway and Jones, where you've got the new location of Hot Joy, where you've got the new location of Nola Brunch and Beignets, and where you've got the brand new and crazy Pumpers. That is the sort of tiny little incubator that, well, that's sorry for the diminutives. That's the kind of incubator that makes me think that we've got an opportunity to grow our scene. And just like anything, it's going to have to grow organically. And I'm looking at, there seems to be a lot going on in Southtown right now. Not as much downtown as I wish there were. And kind of along that 281 corridor, I'm keeping an eye on that.
And what do you consider the maximum acceptable wait time for a table? How do you gauge what's worth the wait?
How much is it worth to you to eat there? I think that for restaurants that take reservations, it suddenly becomes a Seinfeld skit. If you're going to take the reservations, you have to know how to hold them. And you have to, when you're there and you show up for your reservation, hopefully you're going to get put in a seat in 10, 15 minutes tops, or guided directly to a seat. Now, understand too, please, that I book under fake names when I have that opportunity. If there are restaurants that require payment up front, of course I have to do that, because credit card companies don't care that I'm a restaurant critic and aren't going to give me a fake credit card name. So they don't necessarily know that I'm coming. So I kind of have, at least on the front end, the same experience that everybody else does. Now, maybe if they recognize me, they try to make something happen, but I generally don't allow that. I'm going to wait just like everybody else is waiting. I've stood in the Franklin barbecue line for 5 hours. I've done that 3 times in my life. And I've decided that I am not going to wait 5 hours in line for food again, unless it's for 50-pound bags of rice after a hurricane. That's insane. But the question was, what is your maximum wait time? Well, I'm just going to make adjustments for how badly do I want to come to this place. I went to Duck and Dumpling, a new Chinese, obviously gosh, what do they sell at Duck and Dumpling? So I went there, brand new, soft opening, and had to wait. It's funny, they set up, it's a gallery of chairs where you sit in the restaurant. It's almost like you're watching everybody eat from a gallery. It's like with the US Open, only there's duck. So, and I waited for 40 minutes? Totally worth it. Just to be at a place where everybody's curious about it at the same time. But if you show up without reservation at a place that takes reservation, I would say the wait time is on you. If you show up at a place that doesn't take reservations and they say, well, I won't have a table available for an hour and a half, two things. One, if you know that's not acceptable to you, there are other places that need your business. Second, if you do decide to stay, be nice to the people that are waiting right along with you, or who are having to wrangle tables and a lot of people with expectations and short tempers. And I'm thinking about specifically here of Bobby's Southern Kitchen. I'm thinking about talking to owners Anna and Greg Ferris and about customers who, especially on special occasion days like Mother's Day, get impatient because there's just more people than there are seats. And they take it out on the 16-year-old young lady who just started up at the front. And you don't want to make people cry just because they're in a service posture. And there's nobody that's really trying to keep you from getting a seat. Everybody's got the right intention to get you at the table. Long answer to a short question.
So top lists aside, what is your all-time favorite place to eat in San Antonio where you know you'll always get a great meal? Really probably depends on what you're in the mood for.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And my short answer to that, because I get asked that question all the time, is the number 5 enchilada plate at Garcia's Mexican Food on Fredericksburg Road, just because it takes me back to a childhood I never had, right? And gives me comfort, gives me joy, gives me taste, lets me sit in that place with just 10 or 12 other tables and look at the Formica and talk to John Garcia. I love that. It's the totality of the experience. Everything about it I love. But like, for example, I mentioned Charity Bar. I love to eat there after my wife teaches free community yoga. Or I love to have a bowl of ramen after yoga, something like that. But it's funny, we joke about that because my wife hates it when I'm not on the clock and we go to a restaurant and I pull out my camera and I start to have that experience. She says, no, we're just here to eat. Let's eat the food while it's hot and just enjoy the experience and relax. So we have a handful of places we go. In fact, she showed up with cheese enchiladas from Oblate Cafe yesterday, and I was just in heaven. Well, I had been on deadline, so to have something like that waiting for me for lunch, oh, that was so nice.
And that's one of her childhood places, isn't it?
Yes, and she grew up here, so she has places that kind of take her back to those special moments. So
this is a question about Seguin. In light of its number 1 barbecue ranking from Texas Monthly, where would Burnt Bean Company land on your top 50 restaurants? And what is the San Antonio boundary for the list?
Well, the boundary for the list doesn't extend to Seguin. That's just so clearly out of the orbit. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to stay within the San Antonio city limits. Of course, it's a big sprawling place and incorporates a lot of entities within San Antonio, like Olmos Park and Alamo Heights and places like that we certainly consider San Antonio, but also happen to have their own civic identities. Mm-hmm. But we used to kind of spin out to New Braunfels, to Seguin, even out to Castroville and to Bernie. Mm-hmm. But I kind of felt like we need to have San Antonio is a big enough market that we need to specialize when we go into that. And that's why this is a list of top 50 San Antonio restaurants. And I was ahead of the curve on Burnt Bean anyway. And our late great barbecue writer Chuck Blount was one of the very first people in the state anywhere to write about burnt bean when it was kind of a pop-up operation from Ernest Cervantes and David Kirkland. So we've been early adopters on that from the beginning. And when I did the top 10 Hill Country barbecue roundup last year, and Hill Country, let's apply that term loosely, right? But that's just to let you know that it's outside of the San Antonio orbit. They were number one out of all the places that I went within a 75-mile radius of San Antonio. And so as far as how I would fold them into a top 50 for San Antonio, I'm not going to do that hypothetical thing. Certainly if they were located next door to 2M Smokehouse or next door to Reese Brothers Barbecue, both of whom made the list, then yeah, we'd have a real match on our hands. I adore 2M Smokehouse. It's my number one barbecue place in San Antonio. And I think it's a little bit different from what Ernest and David are doing at Burnt Bean. But I'm also a huge burnt bean fan. So thank you for asking that question. I think that Seguin's restaurant scene is something to watch. I also like Schultz's Pit Room over there. That's a fun place to go. And of course, Davala's barbecue over there.
They have good seasoning too.
Right.
So this question, where can we get a Caesar salad that matches the one at Twin Sisters? Really miss it. I'm not familiar with
I never had a Caesar salad at Twin Sisters. I used to meet there semi-regular for this coffee clatch group that I have on Friday mornings. But that was always about having breakfast. Caesar salad is a tricky thing. A lot of places I go to, it just seems to be a tangle of romaine lettuce and ranch dressing, let's funk up the ranch dressing just a little bit and let's call it Caesar. Why not? And a few croutons, whatever. I like my Caesar salad to be funky. I like it to have anchovies or just anything to give it a real sense of identity separate from just being a ranch salad. So I don't have a comparison basis for the one at Twin Sisters. I'll tell you, I really like the Caesar salad at Aldo's. On I-10 out at Dominion Ridge because they do this nice tweel of crispy Parmesan cheese, and it's a presentation. It has sort of some architectural majesty to it, and you have the option of adding anchovy to it.
So I know you touched on this a little bit before.
One other Caesar salad. So I'll mention a Caesar salad. I don't know if it's the same as what you love at Twin Sisters. Barbaro, the Italian restaurant Barbaro in Monte Vista, has a Caesar salad that everybody loves. I mean, you can't see it. There is so much shaved Parmesan on it that you can't see it. But I promise there's a salad under there.
So this was one you touched on a little bit, but specifically, what is the significance of Michelin and what sets restaurants recognized by Michelin apart?
Well, Michelin started as a guide put out by the Michelin Tire Company to encourage people to get on the road, use their tires to go to restaurants. And it started in France. It's almost 100-year-old institution and came to be respected for recognizing truly great restaurants in Europe. And they've started to expand their worldwide scope. And of course, their first markets in the United States were in Los Angeles and New York. And I think it's the reputation that conveys for past performance, good restaurants that they have identified that live up to it, that it has become almost a blood sport fighting for Michelin stars. So for them to come here, even under that sort of paid situation that everybody looks at and says, we wish they would have just come organically, but it's a big wide world and they have to pay. They pay for their food too. They don't show up and get free food. To keep their inspectors anonymous as they can be, they show up and pay their own way too. But so it's a serious operation. They have a reputation to uphold. And I like the choices they made in San Antonio. And I think a few people got left out that certainly could have been under consideration for that. And there's I'm going to be interested to see where they go with years 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm. And how do you keep track of your thoughts when you're reviewing a restaurant? Are you taking notes, jotting down afterwards? I know a little bit about.
I know, because we talked about this. It's goofy. One thing is I have a good memory for seeing a photo and it being able to paint the whole picture in my sense memory. Mm-hmm. So I take way too many photos at the table, as my wife will attest. But what I have taken to doing now is I call it Mike GPT. So I gather all of the data from the restaurant that I was just in, or maybe I'm still sitting in, and everything I put in my mouth, everything I looked at, everything I heard, everything I experienced, those are prompts up here in my head. So then I put my my phone in front of my face, hit record, and I just talk. I just spit out what kind of do a stream of consciousness for what I just experienced. And I never used to do that because it just feels so dorky talking to a tape recorder. I feel like an old Michael Keaton movie or something. I say, hey, this is Bill. But I have found that the impressions that I get in the moment are the most colorfully painted, because we can't just go into restaurants and say, oh, that was delicious, because delicious means something different to everybody. But if I can paint a picture with it and say, well, I'm not very good at just having that instant recall here, but put all of my impressions down in the moment by talking to myself, then that has been, I refuse to look at GPT, the AI component of that, but I've got my own percolating up here, and I just make the prompts give me something that, okay, what can I say in 1 minute to my tape recorder to give an impression of that I can carry away from it and don't have to rely on going back in my memory.
So let's say I have a $20 bill in my pocket. What's your recommendation for a great dinner at a good value?
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. I would go to, for Italian, there's a place I just love called Main Street Pizza and Pasta. And there's a sausage sandwich there that I think about all the time, because they make their own focaccia bread and they use this really good Italian sausage, and it's under $10 and it's just lovely, right? If you start thinking about $20, I mean, your opportunities start to go up from there. And while Mr. Juicy, which actually made my top 50, I think about the fact that I can go in there and get a fight for the number one burger in San Antonio, made by a chef who has had some of the very best restaurants here over the years. I mean, when you go from having Le Rev to doing a hamburger joint in one is in an old Jack in the Box and one is in an old Whataburger. So you're kind of building on the bones of what was there before, and that genetic coding sort of carries forward and then gets processed through this chef, through this white coat chef and his staff. And I can get hand-cut fries, double blanched and then fried, and freshly ground beef, and a poivre sauce, peppercorn cream, and have a drink, and not an alcoholic drink, but a nice soda fountain, because they've got good soda fountain drinks. It's not just Pepsi or Coke like that. And it's $10. Cheeseburger, fries, and a drink for $10. So if I'm really needing to pay attention to that, I would say my number one choice for value in that way is Mr. Juicy. And so you've given me something to think about, though, in that I would love to do a little bit more value pricing. Talk about the low cost, health conscious fast food meal story that you did, right?
Right. I was personally on the lookout for places that I could go on the way home, in a hurry. I mean, convenience often plays into where we go to eat.
Mhm.
And so there were some different things I was looking for on the menu. I was looking for things that fell within the guidelines that my doctor had prescribed for me, so that were a little bit healthier and that were under $10. So,
And do you remember a few of those off the top of your head?
yes, I found I could actually get coffee and the spinach tomato egg white feta wrap from Starbucks for under $10. Now, not one of the specialty coffees, just if you add, a little splash of non-fat milk to it. And then a salad and go. Really, any of their salads are good, and they're a great. Let's see, some more questions.
So yeah, thank you for that prompt, and I think it's the ball is in my court now to identify some things that will allow me to give you a fuller answer for that.
Right. Yeah. That's a great idea. Thank you. And if you have any ideas for future stories, we welcome them for consideration. This person lives on the northwest side of Canyon Lake and enjoys driving into the northwest side of San Antonio for dinner. So any place on the list that would be easily accessible.
Canyon Lake. Isn't Canyon Lake northeast of San Antonio?
See, and then this is on the northwest side of Canyon Lake.
Northwest. Oh, so they enjoy going over. Okay. And where was the place?
So driving into the northwest side of San Antonio for dinner. Northwest side of San Antonio. I'm geographically challenged.
Yeah, and I'll admit to that too. And also, having not grown up here, I don't have the sort of instant recall. But if I'm going over to the northwest side, my number one Italian restaurant in San Antonio is Aldo's at Dominion Ridge. I had dinner at Yozora just this past week, and it's also in that same shopping center, and it's by the same chef that has Shiro, which is the number one sushi restaurant in San Antonio. So he is a chef. His name is Gray Huang, and he is from San Diego and came here, was lured here by how cool it was that there was a Culinary Institute of America campus here in San Antonio. And so he opened Shiro, and then he opened this, it's Japanese izakaya. So it's kind of bar food and great music. They have this fabulous hi-fi setup that they play vinyl on with speakers that you would have just killed to have I would have in the 70s. And really great, just Japanese. We had really good yakitori grill sticks and some good kind of almost sushi preparation. They don't do sushi there, but they do Japanese fish over rice and really nice sake, and just had a great experience there. So those are two places northwest.
This might also be a good time to talk about the plan to focus on the best restaurants in different neighborhoods and different areas of San Antonio.
Yeah, we've done so many sort of top 10 roundups where we're doing, okay, we did burgers. We're going to update that this year. Great. But I like the idea of narrowing it down to neighborhoods. And my first project out of the gate, probably in the coming weeks, is going to be top 10 restaurants in Stone Oak to start out with, because that's a place where people say, okay, that's where the Tony places are. And yeah, there's a couple, but there's also some really interesting, approachable things out that way. And I think we'll probably look at doing, I don't know, top 10 Alamo Heights, top 10 Almost Park, and just go from there and see where the neighborhoods take us.
Right. Ellen, I think that's a really great source to have for just people living in the neighborhood, because as I mentioned before, sometimes you're just going to places, out of convenience, but what's the best place that's close to me?
Yeah, there's a really good place in Stone Oak right now called Mais, which is really specializes in sort of Mexican style brunch food. And I love that. I love the just the wide open opportunities to experience Mexican food on so many different levels in San Antonio. Whether it's mom and pop and breakfast tacos and menudo, or going to a place like Quiche where you can get your prime steak put in gold leaf for only an extra $50 or $60, and then places like Michelin where it's let's treat this cuisine with the full tweezered glory of the very best French restaurants.
Well, we might have time for a couple of more questions. What is your favorite type of cuisine?
Mexican food. When I had the opportunity to come be the restaurant critic in San Antonio, it was, wow, that's just a 10-year-old boy from the suburbs dreams come true, is to just experience over and over the food that I have come to love in all of its forms.
So going to so many restaurants, would you say you have a close relationship to many local restaurant owners? Do these relationships impact your ratings?
I loved coming here as a complete outsider 9 years ago, not knowing anybody on the scene, coming here from Austin. So people right away didn't like me because we seemed to just have an automatic reaction to anything from Austin. And I was from Austin at the time. So I didn't know anybody, and I felt like it was knives out all the time. And somebody told me that I had a nickname out and around in the city, and it was Great White Shark. And I thought, okay, well, that's horrible. But then I figured out, well, it's mostly because I'm gray and nobody wants to see me at the beach. So I've gotten over that a little bit. But as you can't cover the restaurant scene and not get to know people. I'm not just a restaurant critic. I'm also a food reporter. So I am tasked with getting stories from people, from covering them when they win awards, when they open new places, when just any time that news happens, like finding out that Oscar's Taco House is going to be calling it quits after 6 decades on June 28th because they got bought out by the city for a railroad project. And
Nate Guzman is actually working on a story on that right now.
Yeah. And then talking to the owner over there, that is a warm human conversation and not just something that we take from an objective standpoint. But I'm going to tell you this, no matter what relationship I have with the restaurant owners that I cover, whether I'm friendly with them, shake hands with them when I see them out in public, I'm going to evaluate their restaurants on the same playing field, because I think that's the only way that I can serve the readers of the San Antonio Express News, and in all of our forums, is to be their representative out in that world. I'm not an influencer. I'm a journalist. And I don't rely on having warm personal relationships with the people I cover. It's nice to. I think I get better stories, certainly get better human interest stories and access to news developments if I have a relationship with somebody that I can just call up and say, well, hey, it's good to talk to you again. I hear this, this, and this. And then they can do that. And ask a couple of the people around town that I've had what felt like personal relationships, and then had to stab in the side with a bad restaurant review. And that's just the way things lay out. Some of it might be parasocial relationships on the part of the owners. It's just like that thing where everybody feels like they know John Mulaney because his comedy was so relatable. And then everybody got horrified when he had some personal developments they didn't like. Well, you don't know John Mulaney. That's a parasocial relationship.
So have you found there are discrepancies between restaurants that have multiple locations?
Oh my. Okay. This is a conversation I've had with a couple of people about opening second locations. And again, this is one of those relationships I have with somebody, just because I've covered them on so many levels. John Garcia at Garcia's, he was contemplating a second location. And one of the things I said was, I was interviewing him about that, and said, well, what do you hope to gain from a second location? What are you going to buy with what you get from opening a second location? Is it going to make your life better? Mm-hmm. You have 2 locations to think about now. So I'm not sure that what you're buying is going to make your life better. Because I see it happen too often where places open a second location. The second location founders a little bit. They start pulling money from the original to keep it going. The original starts to wobble a little bit, and then both go down. Mm-hmm. So, but then the multi-outlet formats have worked so well for the Gusto group that has Toro and Quiche, and now the mixology places, and they're opening something at Broadway, and they're opening something at the Pearl. And mm-hmm. I'm thinking, okay, the multi-format clearly works for them, but does it work for everybody? And I have found that places certainly that rely on personalities, if you really like a restaurant owner and you like being there because of how they handle it. I think about, what's his name? Prince Blacage over at Mari Monte, the new Italian restaurant over on Huebner. That restaurant is Prince Blacage. He's the man who is there to shake your hand, to clap you on the back, whether you've been there 1 time, whether you've been there 10 times. He is so happy to see you, and you are always going to feel like a VIP. No matter who you are, no matter where you sit, when you're at Marimonte, Prince Blacage makes you feel like a VIP. Well, let's think about the success that he's had. I mean, out of the gate, a couple of months into being open, he had 400 5-star reviews on Google. Holy moly. So I would be looking at that saying, okay, how can we replicate this? Well, how do you replicate Prince Blacage? Can he be at both locations? Well, then it's going to do just as well. Can the person who is going to be the GM for that restaurant carry on his the warm bonhomie that makes it successful? That remains to be seen. So, but I think about without digging into it too much. Yes, of course, there are discrepancies between original locations and second and third locations. That's one of the very most difficult things to make work.
Well, there have been a lot of great questions today. Sorry, we tried to answer all of them. We almost did. But please, you can send in suggestions for consideration in the future, and we hope to do this again. Mike, you want to talk about anything you might have coming up? Well, I think looking at the restaurant scene right now, I'm going to review Beau's Tiny Diner in Southtown next week. And then we're going to do, when I go out to eat, I'm always looking for multiple data points. So if I'm covering brunch, I'm going to be saying, okay, what can I make from that? I could do French toast or pancakes or eggs Benedict. Or if I'm doing a survey of the Mexican scene, I can do, okay, I'm going to do top 10 nachos as kind of a side gig here. Well, what came out of brunch was the idea. I love French toast. And that was one of the first things I learned how to make when I left home, because it seemed fancy, right? So I made it my mission to track down really great French toast. So I'm going to do top 10 French toast. It's not serious. It's not top 50. It's not, a make or break kind of category, but it's fun. It's delicious. It brings me joy to go out and cover it. And it meant that I got to go to the Comfort Cafe location on Bandera Road and have some of the most outrageous French toast I've ever seen on a plate. I look forward to it. Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us.